The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts ownership or management. And now, on with the show. This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
All right, we are back with Jerry Helmuth for episode number 2 on the interview, and we are doing this from the Westgate Resort Las Vegas in Elvis Presley's dressing room from many, many years ago. Many things in here are still original from back then, and Barry Manilow has his personal dressing room right next door to us. So I am privileged to be doing it from this room, and so glad to have the opportunity to talk to some people that I've known for years about what we did behind the curtain, behind the scenes. So, Jerry, we were talking a little bit about, we kind of sidetracked over onto albums and music and stuff like that, but we were talking a little bit about the Riviera. I know you did Show Policy, and then after a while of Solid Gold, they brought in this water spectacular.
Solid Gold with the Solid Gold Dancers. That's where I met Pierre Bizard, who was the stage manager they brought in before we get into Splash. I want to mention Pierre. Again, a very nice man. And he had spent a lot of time at the Dunes on Casino de Paris. And very nice man, Pierre Bizard. And Solid Gold with the Solid Gold Dancers and the acts and such. And it was there for, a year. And then Barbara Hayes, who was the entertainment lead then, the head carpenter retired. And she made me head carpenter. I was astounded because I was still pretty young. And we loaded in Splash. Whoo! But you mentioned Barry Manilow, too. We're in his dressing room. We're close to it. So we had Manilow over at the Riviera, and I was thinking about this. I can't remember if it was 81 or 82 when I did my first Barry Manilow show. It was a long time ago, and I happened to think about this. And now it's 2025, and I'm still doing Barry Manilow shows. And that's kind of depressing when you think about it.
Well, it's just amazing. The man just keeps going. He just keeps going. He's 81, almost 82, and he just keeps going, man.
He's still going.
Man.
I'm 90 feet away behind the glass in the spot booth, so that's okay with me.
Yeah. He's one of the most amazing performers also. But anyways, let's go back to the Riviera, and then we'll work our way a little bit forward.
I have to say, when we did him there, Manilow, he entered at that time from the back of the house. That was his entrance. They had a couple of spotlights that could pick him up. They had, I think, a couple of spotlights on stage. Anyway, something, or they had hung some specials, whatever it was. And back then, like I said, it was 2 shows a night. The first show was a dinner show, and behind the showroom, that's where the kitchen was. So when it came time for the show to start, Barry was back there by the kitchen door, along with one security guard, Tom Fisco. Hey, Tom. And his production guy, who back then was Gary Speakman, I think. Anyway, and that was it with him. And me and another stagehand, and we had to stand there with a couple of black flats in front of the doorway because they left the doorways propped open. But they couldn't black out the kitchen lights. So we had to wait for the waiters and waitresses and busboys and everybody to stop, and the show would start, and the band would start playing his overture. And we would be holding these black flats over the doors, and then at a certain time we'd move the black flats and he'd walk out there, and boom, that was it. But before then, when the waitresses were all walking by, these little old ladies, so sweet, and they would walk by and they'd look at him and they'd go, "Have a nice show, Barry." And he was always gracious to everybody. He always said, thank you very much, smile at everybody. It was never one of these don't look at him things. Mm-hmm. That never happened back then. So yeah, Barry Manilow. And then he went on stage, and then we went to his dressing room and did illegal things. Mumble, mumble, mumble. You cannot talk about entertainment in the 80s without talking about that aspect of it.
I did 4 episodes with Nathan Miller, so
I'm sure that Nathan's stories far exceed mine. God bless Nathan.
yeah, he was very descriptive
Yeah, he is.
on
can be.
The 80s and the 70s and 80s, and yeah,
He's happy to have lived through them. So
Yes.
am I. So am I. I'm happy I lived through them.
he got
I
himself
know a lot of people didn't.
and he got himself a second chance with a new liver. So
Yeah.
yeah, he was doing great, man. It was so much fun with him too, and man, yeah, we just had Jeff Redinger in here and
Yeah.
Steve James last month.
Yeah.
That was great times, 2 guys that work here. See, a lot of the guys have worked here, and it's been amazing. So anyways, anything else you want to talk before we move over to Solid Gold and on to
Solid Gold
Celestia?
was there for a brief moment, then went away. It was fun. And then I got appointed to be the head carp, and we did a couple of shows. Again, I think we did Manilow again after Solid Gold left. And then we started loading in Splash, and I forget how long it took. But it was a great experience. I made a lot of money. I was bad to myself in a lot of ways. But like I say, I lived through it. I learned a lot and worked with a lot of great people, and did not go to jail for homicide. So, Marty Romley, you're still alive as far as I know. I didn't kill you then.
Yeah, it was an interesting group to work with. I'll tell you, that was somewhere around 84, I think, that show opened, right? 84 or somewhere in there?
84, yeah.
Yeah.
We had a strike in 84 for
The
a hot
Riviera
minute.
never stroke.
Because the Riviera had in their contract the Me Too clause.
Yeah.
And so we never we never went on strike at the Riviera, but I did walk picket lines at other places.
Yeah.
Because that was the deal. You keep on working, but you still got to do your time on the line. So we did that, but at the Riv we never walked in front of it there. Yeah, so worked for a lot of different producers through the years, and maybe 1 or 2 were honorable. I can't remember any that were, but they were mostly your cliched scum producer. So I could name names again, but why?
Yeah, you don't need to. That was a long time ago. That was 40 years ago.
That was a long time ago. People change.
Yeah.
I changed. I wasn't such a saint myself back in those days. But we loaded in Splash, and Jeff Kutash, another guy that's still alive. And we opened the show, and I did the show for, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, something like that, not very long. And it was a bad point in my life. I was not in a good shape mentally at that time. Went down pretty low with drugs and alcohol. I went to Barbara, and I said, Barbara, take me out of this show before I do something that makes you fire me. And I don't want you to fire me. She goes, well, where am I gonna put you? I said, I don't care. Put me in. They had other showrooms at the Riviera. They had La Cage, Crazy Girls. I said, put me up in Crazy Girls or something. And she said, what am I gonna do with one of those guys? I said, I don't care. I've been here longer. I'm asking. So I went up to Crazy Girls and stayed there for, God, like 7 years, I think.
Yeah.
And toward the end of my run there, I the grace of God, got sober, and I ended up being offered a job at Caesar's Palace as the flyman in the old Circus Maximus showroom.
Another classy, beautiful room.
Oh, and when I got that job, I thought, this is it. I've gone as high as I can go in my career. I don't want to be anything else. I'll be the flyman on this stage. And it was beautiful. And it was like we were doing 3-4 shows a week back then. They would open maybe on a Thursday, do a Thursday, Friday, Saturday show. Sometimes we'd open on Wednesday. So I went from doing these 2 shows a night, 7 nights a week thing, to 3 or 4 shows a week. And I thought, golly, that's weird. What am I going to feel about that? But I got used to it real fast.
Yeah, you get used to that real quick.
Yeah, and I didn't miss the 2 shows a night. And I still don't miss 2 shows a night.
No.
But I stayed, and then I was at Caesar's, and it was like phenomenal. And I worked with Fred Josephs. Hi, Fred. There's a guy you should talk to. And Jimmy Hamilton. Bobby Clausen. Dave Torty.
Dave Torty, Rogers, Marty Izzo.
Marty Izzo. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those guys.
Forrest Michel, Devon Michel. We had guys on stage with us. Asher, Fred's kid, Asher Josephs was there. Casey Melvin, we used a lot. Dave Scott, that's where I met Dave. Great people.
That was just such a legendary room, too. I mean, there was the Riviera for a long time was one of those legendary rooms.
The Riviera.
The biggest names played there. The biggest names played at Caesar's. The biggest names played here at this place.
Yeah. When I started at the Riviera, it was still at that time where people got dressed up to go see shows. My wife and I went to go see Hamilton the other night at the Smith Center. What a great show. What a wonderful show that is. But I'm looking at the crowd, and I told my wife, I said, people get dressed like they're going to 7-Eleven to come here. And I go, I can't judge or anything. That's just what society has evolved to. But back when I started at the Riviera, it was not like that. People got dressed up. Mm-hmm. And then what happened to the Riviera, I think, was that their main competition became Circus Circus, right across the street. And Circus Circus had nickel slots. And pretty soon in the casino at the Riviera, instead of people walking around suits and such, there were people in shorts and fanny packs and wife beaters looking for the nickel slots.
Yeah.
Anyway, what was I saying? I got off track. So
That's okay. We're just talking about how things changed, and they did, because you said evolved into. I think it devolved into what it is, and
right.
just went because it was style, it was class, it was just it was.
I caught the tail end of an era of Las Vegas when I started at the Riviera.
Yeah.
I caught the very tail end of it, and I remember talking in the Helps Hall one time with this old guy, who now I'm older than he was at that time, and I thought, this guy's impossibly old. And he was talking about the good old days when the mob ran the town and everything. And me, back then, being the young idiot punk that I was, and still am in a lot of ways, I looked at this guy and I said, really? It was better when the mob ran the town? Didn't they kill people and stuff? And he looked at me like I was a slow child. And he said... And he shook his head and he said, look it. And he says, if you didn't mess with them, they didn't mess with you. He said the town was safer then. Your wife could go to the grocery store at 11 o'clock at night. You didn't worry about it. He had this litany of things that were better when the mob ran. And I came to town, and then it wasn't too shortly after we got here that Lefty's car exploded at Tony Roma's on Sahara, and then Anthony Spilatro was breaking into places, and we caught the tail end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, those were the days, some interesting stuff. I'd like to go back just a little bit. You mentioned stuff about, you had your period of time back in the 70s, 80s, and late 70s, early 80s, what do you want to call it, of drug and alcohol abuse.
Yeah.
Was it, before you came to Vegas, had you ever done anything like that, or was it just the atmosphere and the money you were making?
Oh, well.
What was it? Because,
I started drinking when I was in high school.
Okay, well, there's one.
And I started, and then I was doing shows and in community theater in college, and then after every show there was a party, and that was part of the appeal for me, evidently.
Okay.
And so I was in the beginning stages of having a severe problem with alcohol before I came to Las Vegas.
All right.
In Las Vegas, the bars didn't close.
Yeah.
At 1:45, there was no last call, and I thought, wow, I like this, and it didn't serve me well ultimately, but I remember walking out of the Elbow Room. It was on a little place on Flamingo by Maryland Parkway. It's gone now. And I went there after the show to meet some guys, and we had chicken wings and drank and bullshitted until whenever. And I said, oh, I guess I better go home. My wife is home, and I'm out here, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm all liquored up. And I walked outside, and the sunlight was like being hit in the head with a baseball bat. And like to say it sobered me up, but that would be a lie. It just made me unhappy. I drove up. And, walking out of a bar at that time of day, I never did that in California because they kicked you out at 2 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So when I came over here, the atmosphere enabled that for me. And then again, it was the 70s turned into the 80s. And in entertainment, there was a lot of cocaine. There was more cocaine than pot. And alcohol was just a given. It was there everywhere. They gave it to you when you went to go places. You would sit down at the bar, and you could start playing a machine, and they would give you drinks. So, and cocaine was like a vitamin. You could do some of that and then drink more. That's what I thought. I thought it was a vitamin. This stuff's great. I can drink all night. So that was a learning curve for me, and it took a few years. And I got divorced, and I lost everything. I lost my family. I lost my kids. I lost my wife. Came very close to losing my life more than a couple of times. So addiction is like slow motion suicide.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And then I got to the point where I got arrested and I was in jail. And sitting down in jail going, this is arrested for the second time. And sitting there thinking, ooh, maybe I should think about not doing this anymore, like the genius that I was. And actually, that was the last time I drank or used or anything. And it's not like the light turned on over my head and the angels came down singing Hosanna or anything. It was still a long road back. And just because I had stopped using does not mean my head had stopped being the person that used. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I had to retool my head, and that takes a while, especially when you are as stubborn as I am. So I had to I got remarried. I fooled my ex-wife into remarrying me again. And after a couple of years, she said, "You're just the most miserable man." And she goes, "You better go get help, or I'm leaving you again, and this time we're not coming back." And I went, "Uh-oh." And then through a series of serendipitous events, I ended up at AA, and that clicked for me. But it took a while for me to get to that point, again, in my own head. So it's a process.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. Everything you go through serves to bring to where you are. And where I'm at today, I'm alive, which by all rights I shouldn't have been a long time ago, and here I am. And,
Still fairly healthy. You're still doing pretty good.
well,
So,
I'm old and I'm breaking down.
oh yeah, well that's the inevitable.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It is what it is. At least I'm here. And I get to see my grandkids, which are the joys of my life. And I get to spend time with my wife, the love of my life. And all that would have been gone a long time ago, and I never would have had it again if I had not finally stopped. So there I was. Yay for me.
No, that's awesome. No, you did it. That's the main thing. You came back.
I'm doing it. I don't want to put it in past tense because that infers then, like, I'm cured.
Yeah.
And as soon as anybody like me says, I'm cured, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're not cured. You don't get it. You have to stay in that mindset every day, consciously. And that's what I do. And that keeps me from stopping at a bar. That keeps me from making a phone call, which actually all the people I used to cop with, they're either dead or gone somewhere else anyway, so I wouldn't even know where to start.
Wouldn't be hard though. You know that.
No, it
not in
wouldn't be
this
hard.
town. This town is easy. Finding whatever you want in this town.
Yeah, I guess still.
Well, I'm glad you did that.
And I'm happy that I'm
So what
out of that.
year did you done? I'm done with the drinking, the drugs. I'm done with all this.
oh, geez. I want to say 94. 94, I got pulled over driving home one night after the show. Had a burned out tail light.
Was this at the Riviera still?
Yeah, I was still at the Riviera. I'm on a freeway, and guy pulls me over. He got a burned out tail light, and I was probably weaving all over too. And I was in my normal state at that time, which would have been at least halfway liquored up. And he gave me the test there on the freeway, and I failed the test. And I got a free ride downtown, and they towed my car off to some lot. And I got to spend the night in jail again. I had gotten arrested before, not for drinking and driving, but for the results of actions that an alcoholic would do. I had gotten a ticket and didn't pay it because I thought, nuts to this, I'm not going to pay your stupid ticket. And then I got pulled over later on, and it had gone to warrant. And it was a matter of, oh, well, another free ride downtown, sitting on my hands, zip-tied behind my back, in the back seat of a little police car.
Mm.
So the second time I got arrested, I was down there, and I thought, yeah, this is it. And that was beginning of 94, I think. So that was the last time I drank. And I had stopped doing blow a few months before that because it had got to the point where it was making me physically sick. And I would think, man, I'm paying a lot of money to feel this shitty. Why am I paying this money to feel this bad? It's supposed to make me feel good, and it wasn't making me feel good anymore. So I had stopped that.
That's a good incentive, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not cheap.
No.
And it took away from everything else that I should have been doing. So,
No, well, thanks for going over a little bit of that for people that are struggling in the industry or whoever. It's prevalent in our industry, and you can get over it. You can get away from it.
yeah, if you want to and you make that choice and you are honest with yourself. So if you do that and you want to change, yeah, change is possible.
Yep.
I know a lot of people back from those days who are not around anymore. You remember Michael McNeely?
Yeah.
I remember Michael, and we used to run together, Michael and I, and he was a cheap drunk, too. It didn't take much to get Michael all looped up. But he was a good guy, and again, he had a wife and kids, and he came so close to death so many times, I called him Lazarus. I said, you come back from the dead again. You're like Lazarus. And then one time he was expected on a call I was working on at the convention center, and he wasn't there, and I thought, oh, hell, he's late. He's, whatever. And then I found out later that, no, they found him at the bottom of the pool. He's dead. So he didn't, why him and not me?
Yeah.
Right? So I miss him. And there's a few other people I could think of.
Yeah, that's
Such a cheery conversation.
well, I think it's one of those that need to be had because this does go on behind the scenes, and this is and people need to understand it's best not to get started in it. Probably,
Well, if you're the kind of person who has an addictive personality like I do, and you need to go through something to recognize in that yourself, then that's learn about yourself. And now it's 2025, and there are dispensaries on every corner, and I drive by them and I go, I used to buy that shit in back alleys, and now it's in jewel cases
yeah,
in places. And I think about that, and I can recognize it. This is one of the side effects of being a user for so long, is that I can pretty much tell if you're under the effects of something. And if I see people backstage like that, I just walk away.
yeah. Stay away from them.
I walk away from them.
Yeah, you don't want to get hurt because they're going to hurt themselves or somebody, and you don't want a part of that.
Stage can be a dangerous place. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, we should talk about that on the next episode. We'll go about a little bit more about
Okay.
Caesar's Palace and how dangerous it can be on a stage, and we'll take it from that point when we come back in just a moment here. Until then, Talbot, take it away.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.